My name is Joshua. I'm going to be your presenter today. It's promptly 11:30 here. We're going to go ahead and get started on our event. We're here to talk about audit procedures in Church Windows accounting. Before we get started on that, a few things. We're going to be here for about the next 20 minutes or so. I'm quite sure at this point we're going to use all 20 minutes of that. I think we'll be able to squeeze it all into 20 minutes. If not, then we definitely will be recording this webinar event. So if you have to, dive out at 20 minutes till or 10 minutes till noon, the video for this will be on our website at some point here in the next week or 10 days. But we'll try to see what we can do to get it fitted into our 20-minute allotted time here. If you have questions, please type those into the questions portion of the webinar control panel. I will do my best to keep an eye on those, and I will repeat those questions, and I'll see what I can do to get those answered. Please keep the questions on topic, meaning in this case about our audit procedures. Topic. There may be other events that we have upcoming here that are suited for your other questions that you have, or of course our support staff are available at 1-800-533-5227 to answer your specific questions, of course. The topic for today is actually taken from a document that is on our website under our support center page. So here I've gone into our support center. I'm typing in the keyword audit here under the search, and when I click search, it'll bring up the suggested audit procedures version 17 and newer that we would recommend. This is the document that I'm using as the guide for today's event. So let's take a minute and look at that for a second. So there was a video from down here that we had from before on this. Right here's the PDF file. Let me get out my highlighter here. So if we get out the highlighter right here, that's the viewer print PDF. Use that. So when you click on that and it brings up and opens up the PDF file, this is the document that I'm using. The reason why I'm really showing you this document is because we're going to talk through some of these, or most of these, if not all of them. But the real thing I'm really here to show you is that it does show italicized here the reports that we're going to be recommending that we use for each one of these particular audit steps. And the other reason why I'm really here to talk about this or to show you this is because I want to point out at the very top, it says right here, the very first paragraph talks about the list below is intended to give you ideas about areas you want to review. This is not an included list of the procedures, of all the procedures you need to perform. Computer Helper Publishing cannot assist in determining which specific items should be reviewed for an audit or assist with the audit itself. That is simply not what we do. We're here to show you today some of the tools and some of the things that we would recommend that the church consider looking at when dealing with auditing, whether it's you or somebody else that's coming in to do that. These are just some suggestions or some ideas, okay? Yeah, there are things that we've heard from folks and that we've heard from auditors that they use for that. And again, it might help you in anticipation of getting ready for an audit that maybe the church is having to perhaps deal with any problems that may be upcoming, okay? Or to avoid those, as the case may be, okay? But I'm not an auditor. None of our technicians are. We're just here to be able to provide some ideas for you, okay? But FYI, that document is what we're using as our guide today. So we're going to try to get through this as quickly as we can, okay? So the first step on that is to compare a sampling of selected batches and donations to deposits on the bank statement for given weeks. So it talks about an example of if you've got a batch report for a given week that shows X number of dollars, verify that amount, it equals the deposit per the bank statement for that same week. Or, it doesn't necessarily have to match the bank deposit per se, because maybe not all of our money is deposited to one particular asset throughout for a particular week. Maybe part of that is deposited to a checking account, one checking account, and part of it is deposited to a second checking account. But what we do definitely probably want to verify is that the total that's transferred into accounting for the donations matches the amount that shows up in our donations module. So what that's talking about here is if we close out and go back into donations, we can go up to, say, reports here, donation reports, maybe giving summary. There's a couple different ways you could do this. It talks about, well, no, it talks about the log report. So let's do the log report. So if we go to donations log report, we're going to change our year here to say, we'll leave it as 2019. That's fine. I'm going to go to my group and sort tab. We're going to do donation date, totals only, group by field 1, click print. So this will show my deposits that I have posted for the year, for each one of my dates in donations. So, 1/6, 1/13, 1/20, 1/27, and it shows these amounts here, okay? So then once we verified that, we would minimize donations, and then we would jump into accounting. And probably what I do, and it talks about the actual summary of cash activity or transaction journal. I'm personally in favor of using the transaction journal. The summary of cash activity is nice under, here, worksheet, summary of cash activity, but you'd have to run that for separate dates, Sunday dates or the batch dates to do that. When if I go to my transactions and transaction journal, this allows me to really quickly and easily, it defaults to 2019, but if I do clear all next to my transaction types, do donations only, maybe on my group and sort, do my date occurred, again, group by field 1 and totals only, and then again, when I click print, it shows 2320 for 1/6, 1/13 shows 2805, and so again, if I were to go back to my donations report here, where is that? Right here, it shows those same totals, okay? If I really, really want to see the totals on there, the detail of that, I can close out of it and go back to my group and sort and uncheck totals only and do group by field 1, and what that will do is it will, come on, Josh, where is it here? Come on. Well, I'm sorry, folks. It seems to be taking a second to get up that, have that preview come up. I'm not sure why. Let's try it again. There it is. Okay, so here's my donation transactions. Here's how much was debited to my checking account. Here's the various income accounts, and those totals match. So there's easy ways for us to be able to verify that donations and accounting do verify and check out with one another. Okay? Step 2 there, review the year's bank reconciliations and bank statements and pay particular attention to debit memos and other charges for the bank. Reports to review there would be the accounting summary of cash activity or the bank reconciliation, okay? So, of course, all of our bank recs are in here. I would definitely be checking out those. I don't have any for 2019, but you can always come in here and choose your previous bank reconciliations. Oh, I'd have to change my year back, folks. I'm sorry. Change to another existing accounting year. Boom, we're there. Go to bank recs. Oh, I'm not sure I even have any in here. This is just training data. But you can always come in here and print this out, print these, and go, and review the bank reconciliations, and verify your difference to reconcile or not, as the case may be, and compare those, okay? And again, let's go back into accounting and let's look at our summary of cash activity. I'm going to come back into 2019, excuse me. So we're going to go up to reports and export, worksheets, summary of cash activity. So here it allows me, chooses my year. It defaults to the current month. I don't have anything in here for February, so I'm going to have to backdate this to January. And then I have to choose the bank account. And then when I click print, it allows me to see, here's my income, credits, added transactions, donations, transfer debit, journal entry debit, AR collections, and my total deposit additions, and then my subtractions for the month, there. So it's just a different way of looking at the asset activity. Or you can go in and run your bank reconciliation reports as well. Number 3, I don't just have to move through these folks fairly quickly here. We got 9 of them, and we're only on 3, and we're about halfway through our webinar event. Select a small sample of checks that have cleared the bank and go back to the supporting documentation. Now that, of course, supporting documentation would not be in Church Windows. That would be, hard copies that the church keeps of, paid invoices or invoices from companies that the church does business with, receiving reports, etc., that you have, and make sure that the charge was approved, that the church received the item, and that it was charged to the proper account, okay? So again, the way to do that would be to go to things something like your transaction journal, okay? There's another way you could do that too, and I'm going to add this to this. So, reports, transactions, transaction journal. But the other way to do it would be you could look at it from the vendor payee standpoint, that if you go into reports and export worksheets and we do accounts payable, I can come down here to my accounts payable journal, and let's say we're going to go back to 18 where maybe we've got a larger sampling of data. Go to my accounts payable journal, choose a particular vendor that I want to, cross-reference or examine on that, and then when we go to print, it shows all of the transactions that I posted to that vendor, okay? Here's, the expense account it was charged to, the date that it occurred, what type of transaction, the amount, and it would show its subsequent payment, and it would show if there was any current or ending balance for that vendor as well. So just another way to look at that, okay? But yes, I can pretty much bring up very similar type information when running that using my transaction journal as well. So if I were to go up to, say, reports, transaction, and transaction journal, I could find my vendor here, or an expense, whatever works for you. And again, once I click print, it would show just a different way of looking at the subsequent bills and payments that I have for those. And now this would allow me to include certainly things like invoice number, things like that. The accounts payable journal may not allow us to do that, does not allow us to do that, okay? Number 4, make sure all checks are accounted for, okay? One of the big things that occurs, in audits, when auditors look at things like checks, they look for gaps in check sequencing, check numbers, okay? That's an implication that perhaps some fraudulent activity has occurred. So we'd go up to reports, transaction, check register. Again, I can go back and run it for any year I want. And then when I click on print, whoops, I have to choose the asset account, excuse me. And then when I click print, it shows check number if applicable. In this case, these first ones are from our payroll module, so they don't have check numbers. Those were direct deposit transactions. And then it shows all of my check numbers down here, and it would, we'd want to make sure that there are or not. And if there, are there any voided checks in here? And if so, what was the void status? Were they destroyed in the printer? And if so, can they present those checks to me so I can examine and make sure that the check stock is not missing? Or are there, comments or something in here that explains why the check is voided? Was it lost? It was never received, never cashed, what have you, okay? Number 5, if the church has budget for expenses, compare the recorded amounts to the budget and investigate all the differences over a certain dollar amount or percent. Report to review on that would be your treasurer's report. Of course, the treasurer's report is our report that allows us to compare our budget to our actual. So, again, say when I'm running it for a particular year, say 18, let me say I'm going to run that, say, through December. Maybe only columns we want to see are just literally year-to-date balance and annual budget. So we might be able to take off things like period activity, monthly budget, previous year, budget year-to-date. Certainly you could do some over-under or, there, but, here's our actual year-to-date income or expenses. Here's how much we budgeted for it, and we can compare the two. You might want to add something like, over-under, maybe, or one of the percentage amounts in there to see or compare on that, to see how things played out for the particular year. Okay. Did it not add the over-under? No, it did. Weird. There it is. Oh, I'm not sure what happened. So clearly it tells us whether an account's over or under budget in comparison to its actual. Number 6, compare the payroll amounts to the salary wages authorized. So that means, make sure that the related payroll reports 941 and tax deposits were filed with respective taxing authorities. Okay. Reports to review would be things like, in accounting, would be like your general ledger report. So right here under general ledger, you could run that for, you could run it for just your payroll transactions if you wish. So right here, I can uncheck everything here except payroll, and click print, and it'll bring in just my payroll transactions right here. Okay, so it'll do all my cash activity regarding payroll, my tax payments and debits and credits. Eventually, it'll move into my payroll expense accounts. Okay, so here they are. Here's all my payroll expenses. Okay, and in payroll, the report it's referring to would be, I don't think I had payroll open, folks. I'm sorry. Let's get back there and let's open that. Right here under our payroll and pay period deductions report, so you could run it for a particular pay date if you wish, or we could run it for the whole year, for whatever period we're wanting. And then it shows here's how much gross pay we had for each employee with the total gross pay, all of the withholding amounts, taxes, 941 deposit, everything, and what have you. Okay. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, these maybe 20 minutes just isn't enough time for this particular type of an event. But again, we're just pointing you out some things that we would recommend that you check. Okay. If we minimize payroll and jump back into accounting, number 7 talks about review transaction journal for items such as journal entries and transfers to make sure that they were handled correctly. So again, we would use our transaction journal for that. So we would go back up to transactions, transaction journal, and again, I would definitely go, okay, I'm going to go to clear all here, next to my transaction types. I'm going to check just journal entries. I'm not sure I have any, frankly, folks. There might be no entry. Yeah, I'm sorry, there's nothing to show. But, traditionally, why journal entries are important, that we want to examine those, is important for journal entries is because journal entries are traditionally transactions that folks have used when attempting to hide money. Okay, so and transfers are monies that are moved back and forth, or commonly used to transfer monies back and forth between bank accounts or fund accounts. So again, you could uncheck your journal entry and check just transfers and verify that those monies as they were moved back and forth between the church's accounts were handled and dealt with properly. Okay. 8 talks about reviewing any pass-through collections and verify that the collected amounts were forwarded to the proper report parties. So something like your either balance sheet or your accounts payable reports. And so if we go to our balance sheet, let's look at that one first. So if we go into, we're going to omit accounts with zero balances. So right here we've got pass-through accounts. So we've got our crop walk and disaster relief recovery. Let me zoom in a little bit, folks, here and kind of draw some focus here. Right here, pass-through accounts, crop walk and disaster relief are monies that are meant to be paid on to a different organization. So, it sounds like maybe those haven't been. We would probably want to go back into a previous year and examine those since those came into our beginning balance column. So we'd want to go back and figure out why we still had a balance remaining in crop walk or disaster relief recovery from 2018 if those hadn't been paid out properly. Okay. And it looks like we have had some current year activity in there that's, in 2019, and so we'd want to make sure that those were paid. And finally, if there are funds other than a general fund, review the disbursements to make sure that they have been charged to that fund. Reports to review would be your fund activity report and, again, general ledger. So, again, fund activity report, we go up to reports, financial, fund activity report here, and you could run, say, detailed, and we could go to our funds tab and do unselect all. I think we've got activity in these in 19. Go to the funds tab. You could unselect all and say, okay, I want to look at everything as it occurred in my building fund. And then simply click print, and we'll leave it as detailed. And it shows us clearly here, here's where our beginning balance occurred. Here's our income that we've received for building fund for the year. We've had no expenses thus far. But again, it allows us to isolate and exclusively report on the activity as it occurred in a summary format in a specific fund. Conversely, when we go up to the general ledger, when we go here, again, I can choose the year, but right here we notice it says fund. Okay. So when I click on my building fund, say for example, I can omit or include accounts with with no activity, and then when I click print, it would detail all of the transactions. Whoops, I didn't choose year to date, did I? Sorry, folks. I need to choose year to date and click print, and it should verify all. There's my income transactions for the building fund, and it would detail any of those specific transactions. So, all right, folks. I'm sorry it was kind of a whirlwind tour through that. You can go ahead and print out that document from our website at any time, of course. And, please, if you have questions or problems when reviewing that, or you have questions about it or unclear, please don't hesitate to call our support staff, myself included. I'll certainly be happy to talk through it with you. Let me see what questions we have. If you have to leave, thank you so much for attending. You can go ahead and choose exit, file and exit, leave webinar. We'll look forward to hearing from you or seeing you at another future Church Windows webinar event, but let's see what questions we have. It looks like we've got one. I don't understand how the treasurer's report comparing budget, balance to budget is useful. Shouldn't we be comparing how much was spent versus the budget? Well, I think they're kind of, Joanne, they're the same thing. I mean, balance would be actual to budget. Yeah, so how much was spent is the balance. So balance and how much you had spent under the expense is budget to actual. So yeah, you want to go in and be able to look and see, compare and see how well you did with regards to your budget, your anticipated or estimated budget amounts in terms of either how much was actually brought in income or how much was spent in the budget. That's what we're proposing. Was there a reason why the expense was inflated in the actual? Did something happen during the year? Does it, something catastrophic? Did we have to spend way more than we did, or did we just do a poor job on estimating or anticipating or entering our budget figures or guessing in terms of our budget? I hope that helps. I don't see any other questions coming in. Maybe folks are still typing those in. I'll give folks a few more seconds here to type something in. I hope that helps answer that for you. But yeah, I mean, you want to, when we see that we've really expensed or spent something way in excess of the anticipated budget amount, that again perhaps potentially raises red flags. So, you got to figure out why. All right, I'm not seeing anything coming in, folks. We hope this has been helpful. Again, the event will be recorded, is being recorded, and will be on our support center page here soon. We do have the current list of February events out on our website. I'll be hosting another event tomorrow, if I recall correctly. We hope to see everyone at a future Church Windows webinar event, and we'll look forward to hearing and seeing you then. I'll go ahead and end the webinar for everybody. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.